Just about all of us are digitally dependent. So how do we improve security? Welcome to another Techstination interview, and we're happy to have back with us Charles Henderson, Global Managing Partner and Head of X-Force at IBM. Good to see you again, Charles.
Good to see you.
Well, hopefully the pandemic is waning, at least in this part of the world. What effects has it had on consumer habits?
So, while the pandemic is hopefully waning, I think that these effects will actually be long lasting. And they center around a digital shift that we saw on the part of consumers. On average, 15 new accounts, which sounds like a small number until you realize that's actually about 80 billion with a B globally, new accounts in the pandemic. And that represents a huge digital shift, going from in-person to online for just about everything.
And when we have more accounts, that means we have more passwords, I assume, too?
A lot more passwords. And it turns out that 82% of users admit that they're using the same passwords everywhere. And that increase in passwords means increase in attack surface. Once an account and password are compromised, that same password, because of reuse habits, criminals are going to try it everywhere. And since your username is usually your email address, it's happy hunting for criminals.
What does that mean for consumers? What should they be doing? What should they know here?
Well, we keep telling consumers, use better passwords. And just telling them that it isn't going to do much good. If they adopt a password manager that sort of helps them, instructs them on, and helps them create complex passwords, that's going to be a great first step. Those password managers also have a couple of features that are really important. One, they notify you when an application has been compromised and tell you to rotate that password. Two, they highlight the reuse of passwords and sort of shame you out of doing it. Both of those factors are really important, as well as just helping you keep track of the untold numbers of passwords that you have. Secondarily, make sure that they're tracking how many accounts they have and not just creating accounts that they may not need. And finally, take stock of all those applications that they have installed on their phone and everywhere else. Keep track of their digital inventory, so to speak.
If you talk to some people, maybe young people especially, they're not terribly concerned about security. I assume you run into the same thing. It's more, they're happier with the convenience. Just here's my password. And they even give it away to some people. I've seen that too.
Yeah, sadly, I see corporate badges, credit cards, and passwords shared on social media from time to time. And actually there's sites dedicated to it. What's important to take away from this is that A, that's bad behavior, but B, we need to make security and convenience run in parallel. And that's one of the reasons that I really am an advocate for password managers. I mean, I'm really an advocate for doing away with the concept of passwords and going to better authentication. But as long as we're stuck with passwords, let's make the best of it and make it convenient. And that's password managers. They sync across all your devices. Frankly, it can be convenient to be secure.
And what are the alternatives that you're speaking of that you would prefer?
There's things like digital ID and certificate auth that are great. And honestly, even requiring multi-factor authentication on the part of businesses would be a great step. Now, the problem with that is when you mandate security, you run the risk of alienating your consumer. But if we all do it, the consumers will adapt quickly. And one thing that the pandemic has shown us in that digital shift is that consumers will adapt pretty readily. If you think about all those 15 accounts, the number of things that people are doing in online capability now, it shows us that if you show them a way to do something, consumers are a resilient creature.
So some people may wonder, what's the real danger here? What am I exposed to? What's the risk? and the people who aren't worried so much. So what do you tell them?
I tell them, you have a civic duty for security. Another thing the pandemic did is it redefined what critical infrastructure was. You think about all the shortages you had, toilet paper, meat, all the things that we've had problems with on a supply chain basis over the last 18 months. A lot of those came from bad user habits. Now, those might have been corporate users, but that toehold that's gained in a lot of the ransomware outbreaks, they come from fundamentally bad passwords or something that gives the attacker a toehold. What I like to tell people is security is a civic duty on that basis. And you know what? Criminals watched the shortages that were caused outside of cybersecurity, and they mirrored their attacks because they saw those weaknesses and they're able to exploit them for profit.
And the employers of all of us, those of us who have employers, they should be concerned too with what their employees are doing when it comes to protecting their passwords, right?
Absolutely. And employers have an uphill battle. I was talking to somebody about that this morning. The key is to practice good security hygiene. Things like making sure that you're implementing zero trust strategies across the enterprise, making sure that you're doing proper incident response planning for things to go wrong and knowing what to do when they do. And then finally, make sure that you're testing your applications, networks, what have you, before the criminals have a chance to. I like to tell people, somebody's going to test your security. Wouldn't it be great if it was you testing it first?
That's a great line. So for more information, where is the best place for people to go?
www.ibm.com/security is a great place to start. You can also find me on Twitter, Charles Henderson, and you can follow X-Force as we take on the world. There's a real paradigm shift in security today, and I think it's pretty exciting.
The name X-Force, I guess, connotates the superheroes. So tell us a little bit about that before we let you go.
Sure. So I run a team of hackers and responders. We are hired to help organizations plan and react to security incidents. Those are the responders. And the hackers actually are hired to test people's security before the criminals have a chance to. So they look for vulnerabilities or gaps in detections, and they actually attack them just like criminals do. In some cases, actually physically breaking into buildings. In other cases, attacking networks, applications, what have you. Even making ATMs spit out cash.
Well, we're going to wait for the movie to come out. Charles Henderson, thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I hope they get somebody good to play me in the movie.
Now this. It takes a lot of listening to build a better radio, and that's just what the folks at C. Crane have done. Bob Crane and his crew, nestled among the rivers and tallest trees in the world in Fortuna, California, have made a habit of listening to their customers. And that's just what they've done in building the CC Skywave SSB, the Swiss Army knife of portable radios. For everyday listening to AM or FM in the yard or patio or on the nightstand, without having to drain a mobile phone battery, it's a great companion. But it is also a companion equipped for NOAA weather information and alerts that can be life-saving. You can listen to FEMA and Coast Guard transmissions too. Beyond all of that, you can tune into shortwave signals from around the world. It's compact, easy to take with you, and built to last. The CC Skywave SSB. Click on the link at Techstination.com.